Tapes, where I'll be walking you through how to trace your own genealogy. Hello everyone, and welcome to Volume 5 of the Grave Tapes. Today we're going to be working on a family tree that's not my own. As you may be able to see here, it says Bethley John Haney. This woman was my grandmother, not blood related, so my grandmother's best friend, but we always treated her like an extra grandma, which was pretty awesome. I wanted to show you how difficult it can be to start a family tree from the very beginning. I have done a little bit of work here. This is something I did some time ago, but what we're going to mainly be doing today is focusing on Bethley John Haney. So I know some information about him, which is super helpful when you start doing a genealogy that is more modern day. You would think, as I have said before, you would think that finding people farther back in history would be harder, and that's actually not true. Generally, the hardest people that I have come across have all been born in the early 1900s or late 1800s, which sounds crazy because there may be people that are alive now that remember them, but the information for these ancestors is not necessarily online yet. So when you start out, the beginning is going to seem like the hardest, and it's going to be the easiest time for you to quit because a lot of this information is not out there. And I wanted to show you a good example in Bethley John Haney. So my Nana, Bethley John was her father. Here's what I know about him. I know that he was from either Kentucky or West Virginia. They lived on the state line. And he worked in either Kentucky or West Virginia. As you can see, Bethley John Haney, my Nana, has passed away. So I can't actually ask her any of these questions. So I'm having to go on what I remember and what my dad remembers about her. But we know that Bethley John, like I said, we know that he went by the name John. He was a foreman in a coal mine, and he died at 35. Because he went into the mine and it felt off, so he told all his workers to leave, and then it collapsed and killed him. So I spent hours of time trying to find a mine collapse in around the time that he died in either Kentucky or West Virginia, but it turns out that he was the only one that died in the mine. He had a bad feeling, I guess, about that day. I have had a couple suggestions on how to make the grave tapes better and easier, and one of those suggestions was to make it more bite-sized. So we're going to try to do this in under 20 minutes, which means I will do research beforehand. So you're not going to just sit there, watch me type endlessly and do research before your eyes. I will save relevant things, but when it comes to doing your own research, you're going to have to remember that I do research before I film this, as it is just quite a bit easier and better for you and shorter. So what I wanted to do today is go into MyHeritage. They have allowed all the census records to be viewed for free. Super helpful. I don't know, unfortunately, whether or not you can sign up for a free version of MyHeritage and still access this. So if anyone tries that, let me know what the end result is. So I went into the census. I went into a year that I knew Bethley John was alive, and I typed in Bethley Haney. I was guessing 1910 census when he was 5, he wouldn't have had control over what he was called, whether they called him Bethley or John. So I looked up Bethley Haney. As you may imagine, there are a lot of John Haneys in the world, so I was glad that this worked out. Alright, so what came up was this record. Bethley Haney, male, born around 1904, which is correct, in Kentucky. In 1910, they were living in Kentucky. I know that he lived his entire life in Kentucky/West Virginia. So he was 6 in 1910, obviously single. Father, see, here's where I was thrown off originally. Father, Frederick Adams, and mother, Mary Adams. Siblings, Lake and Ethel Haney. So I actually called my dad to find out whether or not he knew if Bethley had a sister named Ethel, and he said that he thought he remembered that. So this tells me a couple things, a couple interesting and helpful things. At the age of 6, Bethley's father was already dead. His wife, Mary, then remarried Frederick Adams because, I'm going to show you something. Let's see. I don't know if you'll be able to read this, but you'll be able to read this right here. So it says, Bethley Haney and Ethel Haney are the stepson and stepdaughter of the head of the house, Frederick Adams. So we know that Mary, their mother, remarried Frederick Adams at some point. It looks like Lake, I don't know if it has an age for Lake here, possibly 9.5. So it looks like that is Frederick's daughter with a different wife. So it tells me a couple things. Bethley and Ethel were orphaned. Ethel would have been 2. So we know that Bethley's father died sometime between the year 1908 and 1910. Maybe 1907, depending on where things fell. And then Mary got remarried to Frederick Adams. So I made a note of Mary. This talks about that they are in Pike County, which I know to be true. Whoops. So now, Bethley John Haney would have lived through several other censuses. 1920, 1930, possibly 1940. So let's go back into the search results and see if we can find Bethley Haney again. All right, I just want all of the censuses, not just 1910. So Bethley Haney, approximately 1904, place, Kentucky, residence, Kentucky, and search. So we have Bethley Haney of 1910, Bethley Haney of 1870. We'll keep him in mind because I'm guessing the name Bethley Haney is going to run in the family. But also Bethley Haney in 1860. We know Bethley was born in 1905. Our Bethley was born in 1905. So we know that neither of these are correct. So how is it possible that Bethley died in 1940, but he's not in any censuses? As we've seen before, sometimes you have a census jumper. I don't know if that's what they're called. I just kind of made that up. But someone who is not, either their records are lost or they purposely don't submit records for the census. This might have to do with religious reasons or the fact that they just simply weren't home when the census man came around, which is definitely possible. For now, we only have one Bethley Haney census. That doesn't help us any. So, and I've done this before. So if this sounds staged, it is staged. I have researched this before, and I'm showing this to you because I find it very interesting. All right, let's try just Haney. Born 1904, year exact. And like I said, I have already done this research. So I don't want to continue to scroll through, but I want you to see that this can be very difficult sometimes, and you have to think outside the box to get the answers that you want. All right, so this isn't helping us. All right, so next I would look up Bethley's wife. So we're going to look up Truda Haney, female, born about 1908, in Kentucky. Yes. Search. Aha. All right. So this is what I wanted to show you. Truda Haney, daughter Billie Jean. Look at the name of her husband here and here. Bethley was miswritten in the census as Bartley and Beckley, which is why we couldn't find him. Because whoever took this, or if Trudy filled it out and they couldn't read her handwriting or whatever, it's miswritten. Okay, so now we know Bethley's name is spelled multiple different ways. Luckily for us, Truda Haney, there's only one Truda Haney in all of history. Helpful. at least in Kentucky. I don't know about all of history. Bartley and Beckley. Okay, so now we know that. I also wanted to show you some death records. All right, the information I was searching for was not actually in MyHeritage. I'd forgotten how helpful Family Search can be. You do have to have an account, but I have not been charged yet. So, we have found John Bethley's death certificate. These are one of the most valuable things that you can find because it gives you exact birth and death dates, what the person died from, if they know, their job, their place of residence, and their parents' names and where their parents were born. All right, so here's how we know this is true. Has John Bethley Haney. Obviously that is a spelling error. Looks like Herthley. I think the person filling this out was having a bad day. John Bethley Haney. Here's a social security number. He's married. He's male. His wife's name is Truda Blackburn. We know that. Birth date of deceased was December 6th, 1905. Do I have that? Actually, I don't think I do. I did not put that in. December 6th, 1905. He was 34 years old, 11 months and 21 days when he died. He was a coal miner. We know that to be true as well. Here is the information that we desperately were searching for. Name of his father, Wesley Haney. Name of his mother, Mary Jane Young, which fits with the census record that we saw about Mary Adams and Frederick Adams. Mary Jane was his mother. Medical certification, date of death, November 27th, 1940. He basically, his head got fractured and then he had internal bleeding in his chest. That's what eventually killed him. In the mine. Accident, date of occurrence that same day. In the mine. Porch Creek. Or something like that. So a slate fell and hit him and killed him. Alright. I probably spent 6 hours trying to find this information. So here's what the takeaway is for you. MyHeritage has some great census records that you can access. Family Search has the same census records. If you can't get them to them using MyHeritage, sign up for Family Search, use Family Search. Be aware that your ancestor may have had their name spelled wrong in every single document you have on him. John Bethley, Bethley John, Beckley John, Beckley, Bartley, all those things were what he was mistaken by. Luckily, Truda was here to help us with this. You may not always find that to be the case, and so the 6 hours of research that got me to this point may be more like 16 hours for you. But that moment of truth when you find this is so thrilling and fantastic. So I know Wesley is his father, Mary Jane Young is his mother. We know that Wesley died around, between, 1908, we'll do 1907, and 1910. And then we will use Family Search to research Wesley. Alright, so I'm going to actually call it there. I am doing my best to make these more bite-sized pieces, so like genealogy in 15 minutes or less. I hope this is helpful to you. I hope that you have learned some things. Please drop me a line if you have a family member that you are struggling with researching, and I may be able to help. Thanks for tuning in.